Most professionals assume visibility strengthens their position. Show your work. Keep leadership informed. Build a visible track record. That advice sounds sensible, but inside a more instrumented enterprise, it can reverse. Visibility is not automatically your ally. In many cases, it is a pricing tool. The more visible your work becomes, the less scarce you can start to look. Once your work becomes easier to observe, the company gains more power to compare and reprice you. That is the implication of work telemetry. Telemetry is not just reporting, it is managerial control through deeper observability. When software, dashboards, workflow logs, and performance instrumentation turn opaque work into comparable signals, the employer learns more than whether tasks were completed. It learns where variation exists, where idle capacity sits, which outputs are more repeatable than people claimed, and how much premium was being sustained by narrative rather than scarcity. Observation changes bargaining power because it reduces asymmetry. For years, many careers benefited from opacity. Not deception, opacity. Managers could not fully see how difficult the work was, how many substitutions were possible, how much effort certain outputs required, or how much institutional memory supported the result. That opacity protected pricing in subtle ways. It allowed narrative, reputation, and trust to shape compensation when the work was hard to measure. Once observability improves, some of that premium disappears because the mystery supporting it starts collapsing. The telemetry does not need to be perfect here. It only needs to be credible enough for leadership to believe it has a clearer view of output, effort, and comparability than before. At that point, visibility starts weakening premium claims that once relied on low observability. The worker may feel more exposed, but the enterprise feels more informed. Informed buyers become tougher buyers. When managers believe they can see the work clearly, they pay less for ambiguity. This is why visibility often rewards employers first. The company gains broader oversight, tighter controls, and better comparison. The employee gains the chance to be seen, but also the risk of being standardized, benchmarked, and priced against a wider set. Visibility is not neutral. It is a bargaining event. It determines who gets to define the meaning of the observed work. If management controls that interpretation layer, greater visibility can compress rather than elevate compensation. Telemetry also creates a political shift. The people who design the measurement system gain power over careers. Leaders closest to analytics, workforce planning, productivity systems, and performance architecture become more influential because they shape what counts as output, delay, and acceptable variance. The employee may still believe the work is complex, but complexity loses pricing power when the observable signals suggest comparability. Measurement does not just reveal work, it rewrites which stories about work remain believable. That is why professionals misread visibility strategy. They think the winning move is to make everything they do more legible to management. Sometimes that helps, especially when the work is already consequence-heavy and hard to replace. But if your premium depends partly on low observability, increased visibility can make you look more common. The wrong transparency does not elevate leverage. It reveals that your output can be benchmarked, monitored, and delivered by a broader labor pool than you assumed. The distinction that matters is between visibility of consequence and visibility of routine output. If your visibility shows that you own trade-offs, absorb downside, and decide outcomes that remain expensive to get wrong, it can strengthen your position. If your visibility mainly shows throughput, responsiveness, and repeatable execution, it may weaken your pricing power by making you easier to compare. Enterprises do not reward exposure by default. They reward the forms of exposure that reveal scarcity rather than ordinary performance. This is why telemetry can become a mechanism of bargaining asymmetry. Management gains more information about you than you gain about the replacement logic being applied to you. You see the dashboard and assume fairness. The enterprise sees the dashboard and asks harder pricing questions. Can this output be widened across fewer people? Can similar results be purchased more cheaply? Is this worker as unique as the old narrative implied? The more precise the observation layer becomes, the easier it is to test pricing. This logic is overstated. If higher observability consistently increases pricing power for most measured roles, then this mechanism is overstated. But that is not the broad pattern under cost pressure. In most large firms, more observability gives management more confidence to normalize expectations, tighten compensation logic, and challenge premium claims. The language may be about transparency and accountability. The economic effect is sharper employer leverage. Visibility often converts hidden bargaining slack into a measurable target. The exposure map is broad. The most vulnerable six-figure professionals are those whose leverage depended partly on the fact that their real effort, substitution risk, or process complexity was difficult to observe cleanly. They may be competent and respected, but if telemetry makes their work look more standardized than it feels from the inside, their compensation case weakens. They are not merely being seen. They are being priced through a richer observation layer, and richer observation usually benefits the buyer. The safer positions sit where visibility reveals consequence rather than comparability. These are roles where deeper observability shows who is carrying approvals, exceptions, trade-offs, and loss-bearing judgment. Such work can still be monitored, but the monitoring does not flatten its value as easily because the exposure itself is scarce. The more your visible work demonstrates decision rights, downside ownership, and enterprise-specific judgment, the less telemetry turns against you. When observability reveals real consequence, it can reinforce your premium. That creates a useful test. Ask what becomes visible when your work is measured more deeply. Do observers mainly see activity, responsiveness, and output volume, or do they see trade-offs, thresholds, and decisions whose costs are hard to externalize? If the answer is mostly routine output, more visibility may reduce your scarcity. If the answer is consequence-bearing judgment, more visibility may strengthen your case. The issue is not whether management can see you. It is what survives once they can. That is the implication professionals should note. In an enterprise that can instrument more of what you do, transparency is not automatically your ally. Sometimes it is a pricing tool pointed back at you. The strategic question is not whether to become visible. It is whether the visibility reveals something the company still has to pay a premium for. If it mostly reveals standardized execution, your bargaining power may fall. If it reveals costly judgment and downside ownership, your visibility becomes